Good day. Welcome to Reading and Writing class. Before we start our new lesson, I want you to think back of the most impressive monuments and structures that you have heard of which are considered wonders of the world. Now here are examples of wonders of the world. The Rome was not built in a day. Whenever we see something as massive and marvelous as the aforementioned structure, we may not realize how long they took to be built. How many people were involved? How many resources were used and how many efforts was put in? All we see is the finished product. But as you see, these structures began with a brick or stone, clay, metal, and others that eventually became a beautiful building. The structure underwent a process before it was finished. Building blocks of the building are compared into paragraph. I choose this analogy to best capture the role of the paragraph in the essay. Therefore, for today's lesson, I will be discussing patterns of paragraph development. For today's learning objectives, I want you to be able to distinguish between patterns of development in writing. Differentiate the uses of those patterns in writing across disciplines, and create short paragraphs or essays for each of the patterns of development in writing. Let me begin by identifying what is paragraph. Paragraph is a group of sentences that deals with one idea or related together by a common purpose. Paragraphs are defined by the point that they support, which is the controlling idea. It helps the writer to explain and expand an idea or a phrase of an idea to a greater extent than if he were to do so in one or two sentences. A paragraph belonging to larger composition usually develops into a section of a big idea with which the whole composition is concerned. Each sentence of such paragraph should contribute to the particular section the paragraph is trying to undergo. A paragraph ends when the writer has said all that he would like to say and is ready to begin on a new one. It is where indentation comes in, which indicates that new point is developed. Now, what are the parts of paragraph? Paragraph includes topic sentence and supporting details. Topic sentence tells the reader the main idea of your paragraph. It reveals generally what you plan to propose, argue, describe, explain, or narrate. When it is part of a longer essay, it contains a main point that supports the thesis statement. Here is an example paragraph. I want you to identify the topic sentence. This, for this paragraph, the topic sentence is the last part. In the city, the Jeep evolved into something its investors never dreamed of, the phenomenon that has been rattling around Manila for decades, the jeepney. Topic sentence can be explicit and implicit. Explicit topic sentence is clearly states the ideas that will be elaborated on in the paragraph, plainly reveals what the paragraph is all about. Here is another example of a paragraph. Identify the topic sentence. For this paragraph, the topic sentence is located in the first sentence. Called the Jeep, it was small in stature, easy to operate, hardy and compact, practical. Implied topic sentence, on the other hand, are topic sentence which are implied or not directly stated. There is a controlling idea of what the paragraph is about. The reader will be able to determine the focus of the paragraph because all of the given details are linked by an organizing theme. This time, this is an example of supporting details. Supporting details are part of the paragraph in which contains facts, statements, examples, specifics which guides us to a full understanding of the main idea. They clarify, illuminate, explain, describe, expand, and illustrate the main idea. Now let us have the highlights of today's lesson, which is the patterns of paragraph development. A paragraph is developed by explaining or expanding one idea. Sometimes this idea is stated in a topic sentence within the paragraph, and sometimes it is implied in the paragraph. As a writer, it is important to arrange your ideas in a text according to your purpose in writing. Are you narrating an event, showing cause and effect, defining a term, or comparing and contrasting items? Your purpose suggests a method of organization or logical arrangement known as the pattern of development, or adjust an individual paragraph. There are different ways to develop a paragraph. First, by narration. By narration, the topic is developed by sequential telling of a story or recounting of a series of events. By developing narration, sequential presentation of events plays an important role. Signal words help to create unified thoughts and to show the transition of events to the next. This leads us to focus on the use of the action words in the story. It also helps to move the story and make the story interesting. The chronological ordering of events helps to show the reader how the story moves. Most of the common transitional words are first, next, then, after, and suddenly. Moreover, it is also important to give specific details in pointing out the direction of the story. Examples of narrative text includes history articles, character sketches, anecdotes, biographies, autobiographies, travelogues, adventure stories, and short stories. The second way to develop a paragraph is by definition. Here, the topic is developed by the definition of a certain terms connected with the topic. It explains the idea, term, or phrase using distinguishing characteristics or synonyms. It is used to set working generalizations that help control the meaning and scope of important terms or ideas. Its main purpose is to tell what something is. A definition clarifies the meaning of a word or an idea in a simple and understandable language. Definition consists of three parts. First, the term, concept, or subject to be defined. Second, the general class where it belongs. And finally, the characteristics that differentiate it from the other members of its class. The third way to develop a paragraph is by description. Here, the topic is developed by providing information on what a person, an object, a place, or a situation is like. It appeals to the reader's senses, allowing him or her to see, hear, taste, smell, or feel the subject. A paragraph developed by description attempts to put into words pictures, the picture or image of a person, an object, place, or scene. You become a painter who colors his or her subject with words, particularly with adjectives and other concrete details. Similar with narration, for having many specific details, description emphasizes the senses by painting a picture of how something looks, sounds, smells, tastes, or feels. Description is often used to establish a mood or atmosphere. The fourth way to develop a paragraph is by exemplification and classification. Here, the topic is developed by a presentation of specific examples, types, categories in which the idea is seen to work. Exemplification, or also known as illustration, is the most common and effective pattern to explain an idea or point. On developing this kind of paragraph, the writer develops a general statement, the topic sentence, with one or more examples to support it. On the other hand, classification is used when a writer needs to sort out or arrange subjects to groups or categories based on their common shared characteristics. Now, here are some transitional expressions in writing effective exemplification and classification paragraph. For exemplification paragraph, you can use for instance, namely, to be specified, to clarify, to illustrate, for example, in short, as an example. On the other hand, some transitional expressions in writing effective classification paragraphs include classified as, one kind, the last group, another kind, another, final type, the first category, are categorized as, and the next part. Remember that you can use both exemplification and classification in developing a paragraph by simply identifying the categories on a particular subject and providing examples or illustration to explain and classify meaning. The fifth ways to develop a paragraph is by comparison and contrast. Here, the topic is developed by comparing two things to highlight their subtle similarities and differences. The author's intent is to describe a connection between two things by showing their distinguishing and shared attributes. Comparing people, things, places, events, situation, or even ideas is done to illustrate how they are similar to each other. There is a need to identify the point of comparison and make it a list of similar characteristics or qualities for each point of comparison, while contrasting is about people, thing, place, event, situation, or ideas, which in the other hand done to illustrate their differences from each other. To do this, you need to make a list of the characteristic or qualities of the subjects and then identify the differences between them. The sixth way to develop a paragraph is by cause and effect. Here, the topic is developed by presenting its causes and its effect on other entities. A cause states why something happens, while an effect is what happens. If they're combined together, they can be used as a writing development pattern. With the cause and effect pattern, the writer can better explain how an event or action leads to another. It shows the linkages of causation, how events are influenced or caused by another. The author's intent is to tell us how an event always leads to an outcome. The event is the cause and the outcome is the result. The relationship is between the cause and the effect. The following words can be used as a signal words for cause and effects. These are as a result, accordingly, because of this, due to this, consequently, hence, therefore, and thus. Second to the last way to develop a paragraph is by problem and solution. Here, the topic is developed by dividing information into two main sections. One that describes a problem and the other one that describes a solution. A problem and solution essay presents a problem, usually discussing several aspects of the problem, then concludes by discussing solution to the problem. Here, the author's intent is to discuss or propose a solution to a problem. The relationship between the problem and the solution is explored. The eighth and final way to develop a paragraph is by persuasive. Here, the topic is developed by convincing readers to believe in an idea and to do an action. Many writings, such as critics, reviews, reaction papers, editorials, proposal, advertisement, and brochures, use different ways of persuasion to influence the readers. Persuasive text can be in a form of argument, discussion, exposition, review, or even an advertisement. In developing your own persuasive text, a writer must first state the issue. This will serve as a background information about the topic. Then it should be followed by a clear, strong, and specific arguments. So once again, there are different ways to develop paragraph, and there are by narration, by definition, by description, by exemplification and classification, by comparison and contrast, by cause and effect, by problem and solution, and by persuasive. Now for your learning task, write a minimum of one paragraph employing each of the text structures discussed. One pattern, one paragraph. Be guided by the following prompts. For narration, narrate how you prepared for the opening of classes this year. For definition, make a definition of the different classifications of community quarantine in the Philippines. For description, describe how COVID-19 affected the mobility of people's activities. For comparison and contrast, note the similarities and differences in the local educational setup before and after the global pandemic. For sequence, explain how to properly wash your hands following the guidelines of the authorities like WHO and BOH. For cause and effect, note the possible reason behind the continuous increase of COVID-19 cases in the country. And for problem and solution, what are some problems in modular and blended learning approach in education? Propose possible solution for each. So that's all for now. Goodbye and see you again next week.